I think our advice as a business would be, the first thing is to make sure you've got business buy-in. A PIM implementation will touch so many different areas of the business, so it's really key to ensure you know who those stakeholders are and their role within this process. Once you've got buy-in, it's about understanding the current state of your data, where that sits, whether that's in an ERP system, etc., and really mapping that out internally. And this is where we've seen probably some of the biggest challenges with PIM implementations are people who've engaged on a PIM project before looking under the lid.
I would say, first of all, identify what is your source system, where the data will be coming from. Maybe there won't be any source system, maybe PIM is the system. So in this case, maybe there will be some sort of like a data manual migration using the Excel spreadsheets, etc. Then understand what are going to be your target systems. Where is the data going to flow? Is it going to be one system or two? Because the way that you structure the PIM depends on how exactly you would do the data modeling. Because if the PIM has a data modeling which is not compatible with the source system or the target system, it will simply not work. You'll have a perfect team, but it won't be able to communicate with any systems. So in terms of how to prepare your data, I've seen a lot of examples where a customer wants to store everything under the sky in the PIM, as if a PIM is like a dump of everything that you can think about the product. Well, that's not the case, because like, for example, stock management, it would be better to keep stock outside because stock frequency update is much faster. Same as with the prices update. Prices are subject to being changed based on various promotions engines, so therefore it's not really the PIM functionality. Another example I would give is sizes information, because size is a very popular attribute, especially in the fashion retailers. So I've seen the sizes data where you have one column of data where you can see text. You'll also see number. You also see negative number for the size. How can it be? Or you see a concatenation of UK and EU sizes, or sometimes it's just a UK size and EU sizes in a completely different field. So just think about how, what it will be like to then import this type of data into the PIM. So therefore, looking at your data, consolidating it, cleaning it up, because that on its own can take a significant time.
It's the same for any project. Be really clear on what you're doing and what you're not doing. Set very, very clear scope. With things like this, especially if it's an integration or a client that's integrating a PIM or implementing a PIM for the first time, it's very easy for them as they start going through this process to go, oh, there's this, oh, I'd like to add this bit. This is because they start seeing the reality of how positively this can affect their business. You know, you don't want to set the scope up totally up front. You want to be able to adjust and evolve it a bit, but being clear about the intentions first. Setting some clear milestones. We use Agile, so it's a bit of an Agile waterfall kind of methodology at Brave Bison. We try to fix the high level, the clear objectives, what we want to achieve by the end, and the kind of the size of the project. And then we move into an Agile methodology where we're constantly inspecting, adapting. Are we doing the right thing?
From day one, I would say a project manager, because first of all, it's your central point of contact. He makes sure that all the people talk to each other, that any follow-up actions are done. Second, of course, IT team, because in the end of the day, even if your end users are not going to be technical, it's still a technical project. So therefore, you do need a technical team on board, because sometimes it's just working with this huge number of data rows. It should be people who understand what would be the best data type that you would like to use for the project, etc. So IT team. And right towards the kind of middle, then you probably would like to get involved the end users, because you would want to understand how exactly they're going to use the PIM.
I think the most common mistake that we'll see is people not reviewing the state of their data before they move into this project. A lot of people will have an assumption that their data is in a good format, or that quite simply PIM is going to solve all of their data problems. And actually where we've seen businesses potentially trip themselves up in the past is they haven't looked under the lid of where their data is set before moving into PIM implementation itself.
Yeah, so when you're trying to understand the value, I think it's probably important to try to understand the return that you're expected to get before going into the project. And you can probably do that in a few metrics. A couple simple ones could be understanding how much time your team is spending managing before versus how much time they're spending managing this afterwards. It's a nice easy way to see how your operational overheads have been reduced by implementing a tool and system that really works. The other one is being able to measure the parity and quality of the product data and product information as it appears in the various systems. So if you're able to keep a track of the amount of times someone has to manually correct something or manually intervene where data appears in a strange way. I think the third one is less time spent by IT teams or your SI having to solve product information and data issues. So if that reduces and you're able to spend more of that support agreement with your SI adding value somewhere else in the ecosystem, then that's a nice way of being able to measure the impact or positive impact of the work you're doing.
The project itself, realistically, it took about, I would say, 4 or 5 months. And why? Because we had to split the project into different phases. So the first phase was the analysis. So we had to look at what data is there that we need to export. Then the data export itself, then of course the cleansing of the data, because we had to go through numerous rows of data and just see, are we going to import it? Is it needed in the PIM or is it not? Then we had to set up the PIM as well, when you do the configuration one by one, and then you determine what field do you need, what field type is it going to be? Is it going to be text, numeric, dictionary? And then of course you do the data migration, which is the import. And when you do the import, you break it into batches. But I think it's important because in the end of the day, in this case, if you do things very quickly and not carefully planned, then you may end up with a solution that is not really working in the way that it should. And it's much more difficult to change it after you go live. So that's why careful planning, it's important.